Overcompensating in relationships. Do you struggle to maintain relationships? Do you try really, really hard and they seem to break down anyway? If so, chances are you're overcompensating, which means trying even harder will likely lead to even worse results. So in that case, how do you make a relationship work? Hi everyone, Paul Micallef here from Autism from the Inside. I make weekly videos sharing the human side of autism, so make sure you hit subscribe to get the latest content. So if you're anything like me, maybe you can relate to this feeling of putting a lot of work into relationships, but for some reason it just doesn't seem to pay off. I find that often when I've invested significantly in a relationship, it's going great and it only breaks down when I need something in return. So why is that? Well, the answer I've come to realize recently is overcompensation. In other words, investing in a relationship that is probably realistically not worth my time. It may be failing to see red flags, trying too hard too soon, trying to keep a relationship alive that maybe doesn't need to be kept alive. So in this video, I'll go through the difference between compensation and overcompensation, since they often look quite similar. After that, we'll look at some common ways we often set ourselves up to fail with overcompensation, how you can recognize that behavior in yourself, and some strategies that you might like to try instead. The goal here is to find a way to put your best foot forward without masking and without putting up a barrier to connection. So what does overcompensation look like? Let me know if any of these sound familiar to you. Do you sometimes overthink? Do you sometimes analyze a situation long after it's happened? Do you spend 20 minutes writing and rewriting a 6-word text message? Do you keep trying to reach out when someone seems busy or hard to catch? Do you write super long letters or emails, trying to explain yourself when you feel misunderstood? Are you a very kind and considerate person who's always happy to help out when you can, because you want to make sure other people feel comfortable? There are so many different forms of overcompensation, and they can be a bit hard to pick because they essentially take something that is good and do too much of it. Can you have too much of a good thing? Unfortunately, the answer is yes. Overcompensation strategies are essentially anything that tries too hard, puts in too much effort to maintain a relationship. There are 3 ways, 3 frames that I've found that have helped me understand and recognize overcompensation when I see it. The first way to understand overcompensation is trying too hard. I remember back in high school, being called a tryhard was probably one of my worst fears. Possibly because it was kind of true in some ways. I felt like I was bluffing, like I didn't know what to do. I wanted friends, I desperately wanted people to include me, but I felt like I was kind of bluffing in a way. I had no idea what I was doing, and I was deathly afraid of being called out on that in any way. I would try to do all the right things and say all the right things. I would try to be included, try to get people to like me, try to make a good impression. You get the idea. This meant I spent a lot of time doing what I thought I should do, and very little time either doing what I felt like doing or even asking myself, what do I feel like doing right now? Instead of asking myself that question, what do I feel like doing? I would focus on what others are expecting of me in the situation. As you can see, this is a very intellectual approach. I'm trying to figure it out in my head, and I'm not really in touch with how I feel about the whole thing. In fact, this problem, this concept, is the main focus of my upcoming book. How can I be more in touch with what I feel like doing and less preoccupied about what other people think and what other people are expecting me to do? But at the same time, you're probably thinking, what's wrong with trying? Don't we need to try? Isn't trying a good thing? And that's exactly it. Yes and no. Yes, but up to a point. Trying is good. Trying too hard is not good. And the real challenge is around figuring out where that line is, where I should take the foot off the accelerator, stop trying so much, and just relax into the situation. That's a difficult question, but it leads very nicely onto the second way to understand overcompensating. Overcompensation is essentially paying too much. Right? When we pay for something, even if that thing is very, very valuable, it's possible to pay too much. Imagine you're buying something small, like a sandwich. But instead of paying the regular price, you pay double. Maybe that's not such a big deal. Maybe you're on an airplane or at a music festival or something, the prices are stupidly high, but you think, whatever, I'll just pay it, no big deal. As a once-off, that's probably right. It's probably not such a big deal for that once-off. But if it becomes a habit, that's a different story. Maybe you could afford it, no problem for that once off, but it won't be long before paying extra every time starts to become a real problem. Now, what if you want to buy something bigger, like a house? They're worth a lot, so you have to pay a lot. Makes sense. But there's an appropriate amount to pay, an affordable amount to pay. But if you pay double, you're going to be really struggling. Those mortgage repayments just keep coming. It was already a lot, and now it's double. So when it comes to relationships, the question is, how much time and energy are you investing, and what are you getting in return? The key here is simply the concept that it is possible to pay too much. It is possible to try too hard. And what that looks like socially is that interactions are draining. Interactions take me a lot of energy. Going out and talking to people is difficult, and therefore maintaining relationships is difficult. It's costing me a lot. I'm doing things that I find quite difficult. And pretty soon, I'm not going to be able to keep up with these repayments. And when you can no longer afford to keep up with the repayments of constantly investing that time and energy, the bank forecloses on your relationship or something. This basically described my first marriage. Our relationship was great until life got the better of me. I no longer had excess time and energy to invest. I was no longer strong enough to hold the relationship together. And when I tried to ask for help, when I tried to lean on the relationship for support, it turns out it wasn't that strong. The relationship couldn't even hold itself together without my support, let alone hold me up when I try and lean on it. Long story short, the relationship wasn't strong enough to support me, and so it fell apart pretty quickly, as soon as I was no longer able to overcompensate and artificially hold it together. I was paying too much, I was holding too much, I was carrying too much. And just like any small load, it's manageable at first until you have to keep holding it and keep holding it and keep holding it and keep holding it, and then it gets heavier and heavier and heavier over time, which does not normally end well. So yes, it is possible to try too hard, to pay too much. We commonly call this masking, which may feel like a really good short-term strategy, but the eventual consequence, as unfortunately a lot of us already know, is burnout. The third useful way to understand overcompensation is in terms of a bad investment. Some investments are better than others. Think of a business, for example. Ideally, you invest a small amount and you get a larger amount in return. It's all about probability and trying to predict the future. Will this investment pay off? Is there a good chance that it will be worth it? This is really fascinating, actually. There's a lot of research, especially in the fields of psychology and economics and things like that, around the kinds of decisions, the kinds of risks we take when we feel desperate. Essentially, if you're feeling desperate, you're likely to make a really bad decision. A little bit like going all in poker, not because you have good cards, but because you don't have many chips left. The mental thought here is something along the lines of, I am losing so badly, I'm in such a terrible position already, I might as well risk everything on this really unlikely possibility because I'm as good as dead already, and now this is giving me the one chance in a million of actually surviving here. And so you spend your last dollar on a lottery ticket. Needless to say, that's not a high percentage strategy. In fact, there's a real risk here of making these types of very low percentage decisions over and over again and basically ensuring mathematically your own failure. It's a proven psychological trap that we can all easily fall into, especially when we feel desperate. So the moral here is if you take a bad bet hoping to win the lottery, you probably won't. And therefore, we can't afford to do that in relationships. Some relationships have a very, very, very low chance of ever turning around from something that is clearly not very good at the moment to something that is very good and desirable in the future. And so when we either stay in bad relationships or accept less than great new relationships, that is a low percentage strategy for ending up with a good relationship. But psychologically, it's really hard to say no. It's really hard to let a relationship die. It's really hard to decline a date or something, especially if you are desperate to find a good relationship and suddenly you're offered one and it's all right, I guess, maybe, possibly, but you know it's not actually what you're looking for. A good example, I think, is sometimes I think about my dying houseplants. I have some favorite houseplants that are doing really well and I like them. And I have some others that I'm a bit ambivalent about. They're not thriving. I'm clearly not investing the time and energy to do whatever it takes to make them thrive. But they're also not dead, so I feel like I should keep watering them. Realistically, I'm just prolonging an average, non-flourishing life of this plant. And maybe I should either let it die, that's one option, or actually do what it really takes to get it into a good position where it is going to thrive, if that's possible. And I do the same thing with friendships all the time. Hey, we used to be really close. I haven't seen you in years. Let's catch up. If I'm spending time and energy maintaining relationships with people I used to know several years ago, that costs quite a bit of time, quite a bit of energy. And realistically, when I stop artificially prolonging the relationship, it's going to naturally die, which happens all the time. It's almost like I have my friend on life support and they're already gone, they're not coming back, but I'm keeping them on life support indefinitely because they were old friends and I really enjoyed the time we spent together 10 years ago. Something like that. It makes sense at an emotional level, and it also leads me to invest a lot of time and energy into relationships that are not currently growing. And the same is true for a new relationship. Does this relationship have potential or not? Does this person really like me or not? Back when I was dating, I used to spend a lot of time texting potential friends, even romantic interests. The hard truth is that if I'm doing all the work, they're not interested and it's probably not a good investment. In fact, I'm shooting myself in the foot in advance by setting up this dynamic where the relationship only exists when I hold it together from the very beginning. Have you heard of the sunk cost fallacy? It's the tendency to feel like you have to keep investing in order to get back what you've already lost, when in reality, the best decision would be to cut your losses and make a better decision next time. So what that looks like in a relationship is that if things are just really hard, really early on, for example, we'd love to meet up, but we just can't find a time, then maybe I should just spin the wheel and try again. So they were 3 ways to understand overcompensation, as trying too hard, paying too much, or making a bad investment. This next section is how can we recognize our own overcompensating behavior? So I think it's worth recognizing that if I'm sensitive to rejection, then I will likely be overcompensating from day one of any relationship. This probably looks like overthinking my actions, second-guessing my choices, pre-preparing for an activity. What might I say in advance? How can I bring a good strategy to this situation? And then even in hindsight, did I do the best thing there? What else could I have done? It looks like choosing what to do based on how I think other people are likely to respond, or even how I hope other people will respond. Oh, they didn't respond to my last text. Maybe they're busy. Maybe they forgot. Maybe if I reach out again and ask them a question, they'll respond straight away this time. Funny story, I actually remember a friend of mine asking for advice from me, for some reason, about how to text this girl he was interested in. So he showed me the conversation and I was reading through the messages they'd already sent back and forth, and it was painful to read, just incredibly cringeworthy. And my advice to him was, dude, if she's still talking to you, you have nothing to worry about. Just say whatever, it's not going to matter. She's clearly already interested to still be talking to you, so just go for it. You'll be fine. Don't overthink it. And this is something I've realized recently too, is that over-planning, overthinking, strategizing, all of this kind of stuff, it might legitimately increase your chances from 60% to 65% or from 90% to 95%. It's not going to increase your chances from 50% to 90%. The thing that has the biggest chance of success or failure in a relationship is the interaction between both of you and being honest and actually forming that relationship. And are you a good fit? And do you like doing similar things? And can you provide each other with whatever it is that you need in that situation? And if the answer is yes, and you like each other and everything, fantastic. You're already most of the way there. And if the answer's no, then no amount of overcompensation is ever going to be able to make up for that. So this leads to another thing that overcompensation often looks like, which is making accommodations for another person, doing what they want to do or what you think they want to do. It's a form of masking because when I do that, I'm not bringing myself to the relationship, to the situation. I'm leaving my real self behind and bringing just a fraction of that into this dynamic. And the real challenge here is that compensating is good, accommodating someone else is good, but how do you know when it's too much? Well, one very clear way to know when it's too much is if it's all the time. If you are habitually accommodating the other person to a large degree, you're probably holding the relationship together. And the point here that I discovered recently is that when I hold dysfunctional relationships together, even when that's really successful, I'm essentially missing out on a really good relationship I could have had if I just let the first one go, recognizing it for what it is. So what can we do instead? So I've got a list of things that help in this situation, but before I jump into those, I just want to acknowledge that it is really hard. When I start thinking like, what's the alternative? It feels like there is no alternative. One of the reasons I get stuck in this trap and can feel desperate sometimes is that it's legitimately hard to find people, to find situations, to find opportunities to have a positive, nurturing relationship. It feels like if I don't try too hard, if I don't overcompensate, then I'll be left with essentially nothing. It's like a survival strategy. Yes, I know what I've got is not good, but it's better than nothing. Isn't a relationship better than no relationship? The answer to that question is somewhat unintuitively no. Very often, a bad relationship is actually worse than no relationship at all. And this is where the really ironic solution comes in. When I stop trying, what happens? Well, obviously, lots of relationships don't work. Clearly, because I was making them work and now I'm not making them work anymore, so they don't work anymore. But in the long run, that's actually a good thing. I've essentially started focusing on filtering out the bad relationships so that only the good ones are left behind. And the ones that do work don't require me to do all the work holding them together. They're mutual, which means I can receive as much as I give. And all because I wasn't scared to let go of what I already knew wasn't working. And now, here's the trap, and I see this all the time, which is really interesting. Let's say I decide to stop overcompensating. I'm going to take off the mask and just wait until I find someone who wants to connect with the real me. And you know what? It works! Suddenly I met a person or I found a group that I really like and they like me too. Fantastic, right? Except it's so good that now I don't want to lose it. So I start slowly putting in more effort. I start overcompensating again. And you guessed it, I create the exact same dynamic of all my terrible failed relationships in the past. This is really hard. When I find a relationship worth investing in, I still need the mindset that it's okay to let it go. And the better a relationship is, the harder it is to be okay with the possibility of letting it go. The plus side is that I can and should invest more time into those good relationships, but not at all cost, not at any cost. There is still an appropriate level before it turns into overcompensation. There is so much more on this topic. I've got through less than half of my notes already, so I think I should probably leave it there and transform the rest of this into another video on another day. If you're interested in much longer form content on this type of questions, I'm actually in the process of writing a book at the moment, working title Unlocking Your Emotional Brain. And the basic premise is that when we rely heavily on our rational capacity, we tend to overthink, overanalyze, and overcompensate, which makes relationships a lot harder. And so the focus of the book is on how to develop our intuitive emotional capacity to kind of shortcut that process, invest less time and energy, be more authentic, and be more successful in relationships at the same time. So if you'd like to hear more about that, I'll leave an expression of interest form in the description so you can keep up to date and be the first to get a copy once it's available. You may also like to check out the Autism from the Inside website for other things like my online emotional intelligence course, one-on-one life coaching, and other more in-depth resources. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please leave a comment if you can, letting me know what you think, and I'll see you all again next week. Bye.